Hey everyone, welcome back to So Wizard Podcast rundown of AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies, 10th Anniversary Edition. Before we get started, please remember to subscribe to our channel. It really helps us grow our audience, and as always, you're not going to want to miss the rest of this list. Number 93 on our list is 1971's The French Connection. This crime drama is one of those movies that was always on my radar, yet I never got around to watching it. Seems to be a strange phenomenon that all of us movie fans are plagued with. The French Connection follows Jimmy Popeye Doyle, played by Gene Hackman, and Buddy Russo, played by Roy Scheider. The two narcotics detectives go through a series of small-time busts in early 1960s New York City before realizing they're onto something much bigger. The movie does a great job at telling the story from both sides. There's some interesting contrast with the characters. For example, Doyle, the cop, on the surface, is someone you wouldn't really want to be around. He's an alcoholic, he's pushy, he's abrasive, and he's kind of racist. The criminals are more gentlemanly and put together. Hackman and Scheider were able to patrol with their characters' real-life counterparts, Eddie Egan and Sonny Grosso. The month they spent together gave them an incredible, honest look at policing in New York City, as well as a chance to get to know the real-life personality of the characters they were, admittedly loosely portraying. Hackman is an exceptional actor. He even took home a statue for his role in this very movie. But even the best actors can struggle with content, and in this case, I don't blame them. Hackman had a really tough time dishing out some of the more bigoted and racial lines and slurs. He felt disgusted with the whole process. Unfortunately, some of that racism rings true for the real-life counterpart to his character, though it's been reported that was all played up to get reactions out of the suspects. I don't want to make excuses for that kind of stuff. French Connection is based on a real-life case and the book about it. It was also heavily inspired by the French movie Z. Z was mostly inspiring for the look and feel of the movie rather than the story. But the book is reported to be a fairly accurate telling of the real-life case. The case and novel both follow NYPD narcotics detectives, Eddie Egan, Sonny Grosso, and these two followed up on what started as a mere hunch out of the Copacabana nightclub. The hunch led them to an international heroin ring. When the ring was busted, do we call spoilers on a case from 1962? When the ring was busted, the largest heroin bust in New York history, or U.S. history at the point, which was 64 pounds of pure heroin, which is $220 million street value. Just to give you some context, that's $1.8 billion with a B today. Here's some fun trivia for you, too. The two real-life cops both got cameo roles in the movie. One of them even decided to leave policing behind to pursue a career in Hollywood. Kind of makes me feel a little bit better about the movie, because I don't know how much the real-life people would be interested in portraying something that was nothing like what they experienced. Like any other movie, there was some liberty taken, and while The French Connection is given high praise for being one of the most realistic street-level cop dramas in existence, there were some liberty taken here as well. One of the most famous is the classic car chase scene. Den of Geeks puts this iconic chase scene up there with Al Pacino staring down the chainsaw in Scarface and the infamous horsehead scene from The Godfather. The car chase is just one example of a standard set by The French Connection. Gene Hackman's Jimmy Doyle paved the way for the cop who follows his gut, plays loose with the rules, and doesn't get along with his colleagues, but damn it, he gets results. The FBI and local level policing butting heads was always a thing, but it became cemented as a trope in this movie. The girlfriend or close acquaintance outsider of the case, who doesn't get along with the detective because he's married to his work, but somehow has a great clue, was also something set up pretty firmly in this movie. Looking back on it, William Friedkin, the director, he must have had some idea that he was creating something so iconic. Maybe not to the extent that The French Connection has stood the test of time, but before this movie he made The Boys in the Band, which is a movie that talked openly about homosexuality in a time when that just wasn't done. And after French Connection, he made The Exorcist, a movie that comes up in every last conversation about the horror genre and what's to be done with it. Friedkin is a masterful director, based on this movie alone. I mean, the movie only had a budget of $1.5 million, and yeah, he went $300,000 over budget, but still, what you see on the screen, this movie was preserved by the National Film Registry and won so many awards. No sets were used, equipment was scarce, he used indie guerrilla documentary-style tactics to get the work done in close to the budget. The infamous car chase that keeps coming up was actually done without even getting permits from the city. Off-duty cops and some of the crew would block traffic for about 5 blocks. Transit did give them control of the traffic lights, which was kind of cool, but 5 blocks isn't much to shoot a car chase on. The car chase would spill out into the civilian-filled streets where the production team had very little control over what was happening. Friedkin was happy to fall back on some of the strategy he learned during documentaries. He made that choice independent from the budget. This was done to capture a far more authentic feel for the movie. He was more about what was happening on camera than making sure that everything was clean and textbook perfect. He even forwent blocking a lot of his shots. He just told the cameramen to keep up with the action. Normally, I spend a bit of time talking about the technical aspects of the movie, especially these older ones transferred to new HD prints. The French Connection, watched through an HD stream, is pretty ugly. But this is one of those rare exceptions where it doesn't bother me and shouldn't bother you as an audience member. I embraced it. New York City is an entity all to itself. New York City at that time was a whole different beast than it is now. The guerrilla-style shooting and the grit of it sells the location and plot more than a perfectly rendered 4K crisp transfer ever could. Along with the visuals, The French Connection has a perfect score. Jazz musician Don Ellis was tapped in to lead the whole score. He was given a lot of freedom on how it would come out. He captures the hustle and bustle, grit, grandeur, and turmoil of not just the city, but the era that our story takes place in. The French Connection ultimately had a budget of $1.8 million, with, Friedkin's overages. It went on to gross $51.7 million, a great success for the studio. It would go on to win 22 total awards, which includes an Academy Award in each of the following categories: Best Picture, Best Actor for Hackman, Best Director for Friedkin, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Film Editing. I don't think it was called Best Adapted Screenplay at the time, but you get what I mean. And this last fact I stumbled across doesn't tie into the movie directly, but it's related and pretty fascinating. The real-life drug lord, Jean Jahan, or however you say his French name, was never actually arrested for the international heroin smuggling. He was a national hero in France because he was integral in the French resistance resisting the Nazis during World War II. Being a national hero, he didn't really have to pay a penalty. He ended up selling drugs through all of Europe into the 1980s and died of old age in his home. Well, there you have it. Number 93 on our list, The French Connection. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more. Also, be sure to listen to So Wizard Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. Check out SoWizardPodcast.com for reviews, recommendations, all new merchandise, and more. We love hearing feedback, so leave something in the comments or drop us a line on social media. All of our accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. Make sure you come back next week for number 92, one of my favorites and probably one of yours, Goodfellas.